Okay, so welcome back to my channel. Like I said, I'm still trying to figure things out in OBS, so I'm still playing around with some of the settings. The audio is still kind of janky, so hopefully very soon I'm going to figure it out, and it's going to be a lot cleaner and crisp. But, okay, moving on. So this is going to be a recap of Channel Zero's The Dream Door, Season 4, Episode 2, Where Did You Sleep Last Night? Okay, so, of course, Jillian is still reeling from what has happened before her. Pretzel Jack coming out of nowhere and killing Tom's friend. For some reason, I cannot remember the man's name, even now. So, of course, the police are at the scene. They're forensics, they're going through and collecting whatever evidence they need to collect. And I think they're back at their place, Tom and Jillian, and the police are questioning them. So it's a partners, there's a man and a woman. And so the guy was asking her, why were you there? And she was like, oh, I just stopped by to say hi. He said, Tom was like, well, we're friends. And he was like, wait a minute, you said that he was your friend. I didn't realize that, he's talking to Jillian, that you two were that close. And so Tom was like, he wasn't really feeling that line of questioning. You know, it's late. She just experienced this traumatic event. He don't really want her, saying too much. And so, they said that neighbor saw a man covered in blood leaving the house and wearing a white mask and da. And so she was like, well, what we don't understand is that why did he kill the guy and not you? And so obviously that's not a question that she could answer. Like, I don't really know. So basically the interview ended. And I think after things kind of calmed down a little bit, Jillian went to the basement and she found that booklet that she drew as a kid. In the first episode, when Tom was talking about the drawings, and she kind of flashed back to that book that, she had a drawing of Pretzel Jack on each page. So as you flip through it, it like creates this almost like this moving picture. So she still has that book. And so she's trying to reconcile in her mind, okay, I drew this caricature when I was a kid. Here I am now as an adult. And this, whatever this is, has now come out of nowhere and killed a friend of ours. So she's like still obviously trying to reconcile that in her mind. And so, like I said, there's no time frame from how these things happen, but funerals tend to happen within a week of the person passing. So now we're at the funeral and they're at the cemetery and she starts to feel some kind of way. And almost like somebody's watching her. So she turns around and Pretzel Jack, he was there. He ducked behind a tree. And so she kind of looked and turned back around. And I thought it was going to be a whole situation. Like she was going to have a emotional thing. But no, she held it together. And so now Tom and Jillian, they're back at their house. And she starts asking him about believing in things you can't see. And he was basically like, no, I believe that you're here and then you're not. Like, he doesn't believe in that whole reincarnation and life after death and that whole thing. We're here for the time that we're here, and then once we're gone, we're gone. So later on that night, or I guess sometime in the morning, she was laying in bed and she started flashing back to this closet in this house. And you see this little door in the closet. And who comes out? Pretzel Jack. And so it was almost like a memory she had. So that morning she got up and she went for a little drive and she went to this house. And so the woman opens the door and she remembers her. She was saying that Jillian and her mom used to live there. And I think their father was there too as well, because the woman asked her about her father, who is Bill Hope. So the letter she got in the first episode with Bill on it that she ripped up, I'm assuming that's her father. And the fact that she ripped the letter up kind of tells you the state of their relationship. And the lady was like, she wanted to see the room she stayed in as a kid. And so the phone rang and the woman got up to answer the phone, and she kind of snuck off to go and look in the room. But then the woman started calling her and she was like, oh, I just needed to go to the bathroom. So she's trying to put some things together about this whole Pretzel Jack character and where it came from. I mean, she did talk about in the first episode the inspiration where she saw this contortionist at like this fair or this carnival, but this manifestation of him in, you know, in as far as she's concerned, she's trying to kind of figure out where that came from. So yeah, the show is very, very, very interesting. I did forget to mention that, you know, that night when they got home, she kind of walked out, you know, kind of went outside for a minute on the front just to get some fresh air. And who's out there? In, and he's heard, you know, what's happening. He offered his condolences to their friend, for the loss of their friend. And he started talking to her about, you know, maybe we should start a neighborhood watch. And he also said, because remember the first episode, he said he was working on his PhD in psychology. He said something about lucid dreaming. And she, you know, at the time she was kind of looking at him kind of weird, but he was like, you know what, you know, we could, you know, talk later, you know, it's late. You know, basically he said his goodbyes and she went back into the house. So you see this, you know, this Ian character is becoming a little more and more involved in, just as, you know, he's becoming a little more than just, you know, the high and by neighbor that most of us have. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting show. Really interesting show. So Tom is looking like a piece of shit. Right. Okay. So we go to the park. There's this adorable baby in a little stroller in the park. And you see Tom, he hands the little boy a toy and he's kind of looking at him all like dotingly like a dad, right? And so the next thing you know, a woman walks up and she sees the little boy with the toy and she takes the toy and she looks like she know who gave him the toy. And so she stands up, she looks around. Of course, Tom is nowhere to be found. So she speeds off. So we're going to assume that that's Sarah Winters. Okay. So the reason I'm saying that Tom is coming off as a piece of shit is he's using Jillian's insecurities and her trust issues against her. He's making her think she's crazy for thinking that he's hiding something from her and lying to her, when in fact it looks like he is actually lying to her and hiding something from her. Okay. So we flash back to the house. So the woman leaves. She takes the dog on a little walk. So Jillian, I guess she knew where the hiding key was. So she went back into the house. And she went back into the room and she saw the closet that she saw in her, I guess, memory when she was laying in bed. And so she goes in and she starts pulling away the wallpaper. So once she's done, you see the little door. So this door exists. And she opens the door. And it looks like there was like a Pretzel Jack, but dead. Like it was just like I don't know. It's like, you know, maybe, you know, she at one point in time it's like almost like it wasn't. This isn't his first time. Her first time seeing him or this manifestation of him, and so it looked like Pretzel Jack dead in this little room in this door. Almost like, you know. At one point in time when she was a kid, because the lady was talking about how they lived there when she was a little girl. Maybe as a little girl, she saw him as an imaginary friend. And as she grew older, she needed him less. And so that, I guess, manifestation of him, I'm going to stop the remote, went away. And so she saw the carcass and she jumped back. And it's like, okay, what the hell? So later on that night, she's with Tom and they're having their little love session, and you can see that her eyes, she's not really into what's going on, and she's very quiet. And so, you know, afterwards he's trying to talk to her, and she's not really responsive. And he started asking her, like, well, why did you go to the guy's house? And she didn't say anything. And he was like, you know what? He kind of got up and started to put his clothes on. And she was like, are you upset with me? He was like, well, no, you know, the police are asking, like, they feel like you're hiding something from them. And, you know, at this point, I just don't know what to believe, what to think. And so he goes on downstairs. And so she eventually gets out of bed and she walks over to the closet, you know, to get herself together. And then you see in the room, I'm assuming it's that bathroom, you see Pretzel Jack walk by. Okay. So she's standing there and she's getting dressed, and she started hearing this clicking sound. I don't know what that's about, but she looks over, and you can see through the crack of the closet door, like somebody standing behind the door. Pretzel Jack is standing there peering at her, and it's like blood shit all on his face. And of course, she screams the place down, right? And she runs downstairs to tell Tom. Tom comes back up with a butcher knife, and he looks through the room, and of course, Pretzel Jack is nowhere to be found. So now it's looking like Jillian is losing her mind. So it's like, okay. It's like so many, things are happening that's like fucking with her mental at this point. So yeah, it's deep. I'm sure that somebody's going to break this particular show down. Like I said, I haven't seen the other seasons, and it's going to be some deep psychological, philosophical meaning to it. You can, I get the doors and the mind and how we compartmentalize things. So I can get, certain things I can get, but I'm sure somebody's going to find like the deeper meaning in this. Because it's a good show, and it's just really interesting to watch. So Jillian is meeting with Abel, her therapist, and she makes the comment about Pretzel Jack becoming real. So of course she was like, well, what do you mean by that? And so you get into the backstory of how Pretzel Jack came to be, how he became real, how he manifested. Okay, so she talked about when she was 8 years old, her father left, and that's when Pretzel Jack appeared. Like, when things like that happens when you're dealing with children, there's a lot of emotional turmoil, a lot of confusion. There's a lot of emotional energy that's used, and that you people are going through and during times like that. And so it's believed, or at least she believes, and to a certain extent her therapist believes, that he doesn't believe that Pretzel Jack is real in the sense that we are real. He feels that he's real in the sense that he represents something else, like the disconnect that she had with her father, the emotional turmoil that she's having. It seems like when she's going through like this emotional upheaval is when he manifests. And basically, like I said, not in the real world sense, but like in her mind. So she started to get frustrated because she felt like he wasn't listening to her. And she was like, no, I'm trying to tell you. And of course, he's a therapist, so he's rationalizing this. You're not going to convince the therapist that some caricature you created as a kid is now real. And so she started to get upset. He was like, you know what, let's try. He recommended some type of medication, Prozac or something for anxiety, I guess. And she was like, no, fuck that. I don't want any medication. I just want to be heard. And so you could see how when she gets when she gets upset or frustrated, she's exerting a lot of energy outward. And so you see the light starts flickering and like things start happening. And so she ends up getting so frustrated, she got up and she walked out. At that point, he said that their session was over. And so she just fuck that. She got up and walked out. So she gets home, and of course Ian's in the front yard doing something. And then she walks over and she starts talking to him like, can I talk to you more about this neighborhood watch thing? And so she goes over to the house, and they started, the little back and forth. And then she made some mention of something, and he asked her, could this, basically your current state be contributed to this whole door situation? And of course she didn't want to say anything because you just sound like a crazy person. But she told him that the backstory of Pretzel Jack, how he came about when she was something that she created as a kid, and how he was the one that killed Jason. Finally, he got the name. The friend killed Jason, and Ian was like, "Well, why did he do that? What was going on with you and Jason? Why did he feel like he was protecting you or something?" And so she said that Well, we were getting back that, they got to say he's argument. He started throwing up some personal stuff in her face that he probably shouldn't have known, but at the very least should not have mentioned whatever, Tom had told him in confidence. And we got really angry. And that's when Pretzel Jack appeared, and that's when he fucked Jason up. And so he's like, okay, so Ian is making the connection between her emotional state and the appearance of Pretzel Jack. And so he said, so was there anybody else you got upset with lately? And then she thought back, her therapist, she got upset because she felt like he wasn't listening to her, and she got upset, fuck that, and she stormed out. So they raced back to his office and burst in on him. He's in the middle of dealing with a client, and she looks at him and she was like, oh my God, are you okay? He was like, yeah, are you? And so he ends up storming out. So they end up, not storming out, Lord. They end up, they look around, didn't see anything, and they run out, Tom and Ian. Not Tom, Jillian and Ian. And so before the door closed, she was like, wait a minute, is this Tom? So at this point, Abel has never met Tom. He doesn't know what Tom looked like, because Ian is a kind of thin white guy, and Tom is dark skinned, kind of physically fit black guy. So by that statement, he has never seen Tom. So, she's starting to make the connection, but you can see, obviously, they're making the connection between her emotions and Pretzel Jack's appearance. Okay, so we finally find out who this mystery woman is when that night Jillian followed him. So this woman appears to be some type of therapist. She's fucked up, but we will get to that. She appears to be some type of therapist, and she knows all about the situation with Sarah Winters and this kid. And, Tom must have a relationship with this kid, but she was like, she's probably doing what she needs to do to protect her family. So we're assuming that Sarah is married. This child is very young. Like I said in the previous clip, that the child is still in a stroller. So, it's quite possible that the man that she's married to believes that this is his child. So a lot of hearts and families are going, if it comes out that this is his child, can be torn apart. So the lady was like, you don't understand that, but this is the situation. And so he's been doing some type of treatment. I don't know what, she walks him into this back room, and she lights some candles and tells him that, he can relax, and I don't really know what the hell what she was doing. And so he starts taking his clothes off. She leaves the room, and he starts taking his clothes off. And then she goes into another room, locks the door, opens her laptop, and there's a camera in this room. So she's sitting there watching him undress, and then she starts masturbating. I'm like, okay, how the hell do you... This bitch is crazy. Okay, so now we find out that he's not sleeping with this woman, but he's still keeping these secrets from Jillian and then treating her like she's crazy. So, you know what, Tom, you're an asshole. You're just a piece of shit. So, Jillian and Ian arrive home. It's late at this point, and obviously Tom is not there. He's at the pervert's house. Okay. So they started talking, and she just went over to Ian's house, and they continued talking, and he started telling her about his imaginary friend that he called Tall Boy. And so she kind of laughed, because it's not a very creative name. He was like, yeah, well, he was tall. So that was his justification. But that was, that's the train of thought of children. And then he started asking her questions about, her and Tom. Is like, do you guys fight a lot? And she was like, well, yeah, but we have our fair share of fights, but it happens in marriage, and we're still trying to figure things out. But, she was optimistic, it just goes with the territory. And so he asked her if she was an only child. And she said, well, yeah. And he said, well, I am too. He said, that's, one of the things about being an only child, we tend to be more creative because we typically don't have any siblings to play with. And he did admit to being an awkward child. So he spent most of his time alone. And he said, he mentioned fathers. And so she said, so do you know who my father is? He said, yeah, I think, does he still, I see his posters around town, like he does development. So I guess he's in construction or, that kind of stuff. And she said, and then she was like, yeah, he said, we tend to be that way. Only children tend to be that way when they have unreliable fathers. And she said, it's hard to reconcile the two fathers that I had. So I had this one father who would take me to soccer practice every Sunday. And then I had this other side of my father who had a whole other family that he kept hidden from my family. And so basically you're finding more and more about why she has such disdain for her father, is that he had a secret family. And that was the cause of the breakup of her family, is that her father's deceit and lies. So that's where her trust issues stem from. And so they talked for a little bit more, and she just went on home. And so they flash back to Tom. And Tom, he's got his shorts on, and he put some earphones in, and he walks into this room, and it's just a room with this with a pool. And it's like, okay, I don't know, it's some kind of therapy. So he gets in the water, and he's just floating. I'm sure there's a name for it, but I can't think of it right now. And it's supposed to be, you're in the water is supposed to be relaxing, and it's peaceful, and it's quiet, and you're able to kind of, you don't have all the distractions of life. So you're able to kind of just let go. And it's like, you're just floating, like your body, you're just floating. There's not any music. It's supposed to be a very relaxing, thing. So we flash back to Jillian, and somehow, for whatever reason, he has his phone linked to their laptop. So a call comes in, and so she sits down, and she sees this call, and she, logs into the laptop, and it just says S. So she's like, okay, she really thought about it, like, should I answer, should I not? So she clicked answer. She didn't say anything, and so what she hear is Sarah saying, Tom, I know you're there. I know you were at the park. If you don't stay away from my family, I'm going to call the authorities. I'm going to do something. Just stay away from my family. And so, of course, this sets Jillian off. And so she is, at this point, she's pissed. And we've already established that Pretzel Jack appears when Jillian is in some emotional distress. And he attacks the cause of that emotional distress. So we flash back to the house, though it looks like a house, like she runs business from her house, but whatever. So she goes into the kitchen, they make her a little drink, and she, heads back to the room, and then you see Pretzel Jack. So Pretzel Jack is in the house. She goes back to her office, and she's sitting down. She's still watching Tom on her laptop, and then she hears a noise, and she goes out to check the noise. And so she's looking, she didn't see anything. And then Pretzel Jack's head bopped out a little bit out of this dark room, and then goes back in. So, of course, she screams. She runs into the office, grabs her gun, goes back out. And he just walks out, and he walks in the other direction. And so she shoots his ass in the back. He drops down. He starts doing his own contortion shit and starts coming at her on all fours. And all you hear is bang, bang, bang. You hear the gun going off. So this way, we don't know what the hell's happened to her, right? So next thing you know, we flash back to Tom. So you got all this chaos going on outside, but he can't hear it because he's in this closed room wearing earplugs. So he can't hear, for some reason he couldn't hear those gunshots going off. And the next thing you know, he's just, he's floating. And then you see this paint, this white paint drop on his forehead. So he opens his eyes. And he sees Pretzel Jack's fucked up face with the blood and the clown paint and all that. And then next the knife comes out. He's trying to stab Tom. Tom, wrestles the knife away from him. But Tom is still in the pool. So now he's basically drowning Tom. So Tom is now in a fight for his life. And that's basically how this episode ends. So we don't know what happened to the doctor. And we don't know what happened to, the doctor / pervert. We don't know what Tom's fate is going to be. So, like I said, a very interesting show. And I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.